Hello and welcome to another episode of Timeless Literature.
Today we want to discuss a common principle among two classic American stories, My Antonia by Willa Cather and Bernice Bobbs Her Hair by Scott F. Fitzgerald.
So for all of you viewers who haven't read or even heard of the two classics, we're just going to provide you with a short summary of what the story's about.
My Antonia is a story about a family who comes over from Bohemia. Antonia was a young girl who had to adapt to her new environment and deal with many hardships throughout her life. After her father passed away, she had to take on the role of taking care of the land, something that a woman was not supposed to do at the time.
Bernice Bobbs Her Hair is a short story that takes place in the 1920s. The 1920s was a breakthrough period for women, but Bernice had a lot of trouble adapting to these new times. She was stuck in her old-fashioned ways, and she was convinced by her sneaky cousin Marjorie that she needed to change her ways. So Bernice got very caught up in her newfound popularity, and she takes her actions a bit too far. She commits the unspeakable action of bobbing her hair, which was something that signified someone of the lower class during the 1920s.
As you can see, these two characters choose very different paths. Antonia didn't care what society thought of her and did what she needed to do to keep her family going.
But Bernice decided to change into a woman that society wanted her to be, and she was afraid to be who she truly was.
This allows us to transition into our next idea of the day, the concept of fearful versus fearless.
Is it better to be fearful or fearless?
Should these characters have conformed to society or done what they truly believed in?
I don't know. Let's start out with the concept of fearful.
There once was a girl who just wanted to fit in. Bernice was her name and her cousin wore her thin. She first was reluctant to change her old ways, but changed her mind just to receive no praise. With her cousin as her mentor, she became a whole new girl. Marjorie taught her all new ways, even how to twirl. First it worked out well and Bernice became well known until she stole her cousin's man and Marjorie sought to regain her throne. Tricking her to bob her hair was the end of Bernice's reign. Bernice left behind some popularity, and Marjorie regained her fame. But Bernice refused to be known as the pathetic girl who lost her way. So she left with Marjorie's braids in hand that she cut then tossed away.
The word fearful usually has a negative connotation associated with it.
Yeah, you don't usually think of the protagonist of a story as fearful.
But what about Bernice? What made her fearful?
Bernice felt that she could not be herself. She conformed to society because she thought she had old-fashioned principles that needed to be changed. She became Marjorie's puppet, only saying and doing what Marjorie told her to do because she was so desperate to fit in. But since Marjorie was pulling the strings, she had the ability to ruin Bernice whenever she felt like it, which is exactly what she did when Bernice started to take too much attention away from her.
Bernice was afraid that she would not be able to have the same opportunities as everyone else if she didn't act like the people around her.
Exactly that. Bernice, being the fearful character, allowed the reader to understand how people feel pressured by their society.
There's some excuse for an ugly girl whining. If I'd been irretrievably ugly, I'd never have forgiven my parents for bringing me into the world. But you're starting life without any handicap. Marjorie's little fist clenched. If you expect me to weep with you, you'll be disappointed. Go or stay, just as you like. And picking up her letters, she left the room. Bernice claimed a headache and failed to appear at the luncheon. They had a matinee date for the afternoon, but the headache persisting, Marjorie made explanation to a not very downcast boy. But when she returned late in the afternoon, she found Bernice with a strangely set face waiting for her in the bedroom. I've decided, began Bernice without preliminaries, that maybe you're right about things. Possibly not, but if you'll tell me why your friends aren't interested in me, I'll see if I can do what you want me to.
Actually, the feelings of a character in a story are not meant just to give the character a personality, but are meant to contrast the setting and the world around them.
If Bernice had not been fearful of what to do with her life, the reader would have had trouble understanding the values present in the 1920s.
The things that Bernice had to change about herself, like the way she danced and dressed, were issues directly related to the 1920s.
The idea of being afraid of society is a principle that stands even today, But why you're afraid is something that's constantly changing.
Think about your favorite movie or novel.
What was holding the protagonist back?
Was it a personal struggle?
A societal struggle?
Chances are the protagonist was dealing with an issue that was directly related to the setting of the story.
No matter how obvious it comes off to the viewer or reader, the author needs to make the story have values that are directly related to the certain time period in order to make the story relevant.
Even though Bernice was fearful and unable to completely overcome her fears, the story would not have had the same impact on the reader if Bernice had not conformed to society.
Each and every story needs a character with a defining characteristic, and even though Bernice was fearful, a character of another story can have the same effect on the reader by being fearless.
This idea of fearlessness is embodied by Antonia in My Antonia.
The Shimerdas were a family from Bohemia and very poor. They came to America in hope of finding something more. Along with them was young Antonia, who spoke no English at all. But as many people noticed, she was as cute as a doll. Jim Burton and his family decided to lend the Shimerdas a hand. The Burtons were well off and their house was very grand. But life in America was not what Father Shimerda had hoped. Killing himself was his means of escape, and his family left to mope. They still needed to survive, and Antonia took the role. She was still at a young age, and the job was quite a heavy toll. Working on the land was not something a girl was supposed to do. But Antonia ignored what people said and helped the family through. When she moved into town, people spoke behind her back. Although they didn't know her, they said she acted like a whack. In the end, Antonia was happy despite what people said. Back on a farm with her children, she was happy and wed.
Now that you all know the background of Antonia's story, I think we can all agree that she did not have an easy life.
She came to the country poor, and life was definitely a challenge. After her dad died, she had to take on a lot of responsibility.
At that time, it wasn't proper for a girl to be working on the land. However, Antonia refused to conform to what society wanted her to be.
She went out on the field and took care of her family, and made sure that they had enough to eat.
However, this did mean sacrificing a lot of things that she wanted to do, such as going to school and getting an education.
This act of selflessness truly shows how Antonia does everything for her family. She would love to go to school and not to have to worry about feeding her siblings, but she's mature and willing to do whatever it takes to protect her family.
I was thinking, as I watched her, how little it mattered. About her teeth, for instance. I know so many women who have kept all the things she had lost, but whose inner glow has faded. Whatever else was gone, Antonia had not lost the fire of life.
This is where we should make something very clear. When we say that Antonia is fearless, we don't mean that she isn't afraid of anything. I mean, everyone's afraid of spiders. We mean that she isn't afraid of what society thinks of her.
Antonia has many fears, yet she comes off as a strong and confident woman. To others, she seems as if she has total control over her life's direction. However, it's clear through certain passages in the novel that she is truly scared of where her life and family may end up.
In the end, Antonia ended up having a large family and living a happy life, regardless of the fact that she never did have a lot of money. Her fearlessness showed the effect of society in the late 18th century.
So after examining both Bernice and Antonia, what do you think?
Is it better to be fearful or fearless?
There's no right or wrong answer to this question, and plenty of authors have been writing novels about this topic for centuries. A huge portion of the books we read are about a protagonist either changing to what society wants them to be or standing out from the crowd.
Take a few modern books. What about The Hunger Games? A book about a girl who wasn't afraid to stand out from society and fight for what she believed in. The concept of fearful versus fearless is a timeless theme that has been exemplified in thousands of books and will continue to be written about as time goes on.
Bernice, an example of a fearful protagonist, and Antonia, a fearless protagonist, are just two of the characters that set as an example for this theme.
Not only in books, but people also have to face the decision of whether they want to blend in or stand out from the crowd in their everyday lives.
So what kind of a person are you? Are you fearful?
Or are you fearless?
So thanks for watching Timeless Literature, and see you next time.